Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to go over a specific type of problem with you because in class we're having some issues. You guys are getting the main topic correctly. The problem is you're getting all your little details confuzzled. You must know domains and ranges. You must be able to write things in interval notation correctly. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go through it, and this is how it should look on a test, on a review sheet, or even on your homework. This is what it ought to look like. First things first, f of x equals -7/10 times x to the -8th. Very first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph it. All right, so to graph this, we're going to need to plug this in to the equation, and we're going to go ahead and put it in our calculator. Now, by putting it in our calculator, we can clearly see that what we end up with is something that looks like this. Now, you look as if there may not make it to 0, that it's somewhere stopping between -1 and 0, or 1 and 0. It looks as if maybe it's going to intersect the y-axis here, or the x-axis somewhere here. So by looking at the graph, we can get quite a bit of information, but we're not going to get enough information. So what we need to do is we need to take our graph, we need to begin working through the problems and evaluate it not just from a graphic standpoint, but also from a algebraic or equational standpoint. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to determine the domain. The domain is all the possible x values. Now, in this case, I have domain because I got numbers here, numbers here. I have some issues in the middle, but I got domain over here all over the place. The question is, how close does it come? It looks as if it may stop at 1 or -1, but I can go up here to my formula, and I can say, if I attempt to plug in -7/10 times 0.001 to the -8th, that looks like it could potentially be in this hole. But if I try plugging it in, I get an answer. Okay, when I plug this in to my calculator, I come up with -7 e to the 31. -7 e to the 31, which means -7 with 31 zeros behind it. So it's going to give me, by putting in a small x value, I'm going to get a y value that's really huge. Okay, so what it says is this gets really close and gets infinitely close, but it goes way down. I could do the same thing from the negative side, but what it's going to tell me is that my domain is all real numbers except x can't equal 0. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's also give you another key piece. For those of you that like writing it in interval notation, this is not right. This does not make any mathematical sense because I have 0 to infinity, which might be okay, but it's been put before this thing. And this is like math Yoda talk, okay? 0 to -infinity makes no sense because on a number line, -infinity is further back than 0. So -infinity to 0. From 0 to +infinity. You must put these things in order. So that is not a valid answer. Stop putting Yoda math on your papers. The intervals have to be in order, listed from smallest to greatest. All right, so for our range, well, the kicker is it looks like it may be on the graph, it might just touch up here on 0. Well, it might, but let's double check it. Let's take our function, but let's say set y equal to 0, because we know that we can't take x equal to 0. Take y equal to 0, negative 7/10 times x to the negative 8th. At this point, I could multiply both sides by 10 over negative 7. I could do that fairly easily. That's gone, that's gone. 0 times anything is 0 equals x to the negative 8th. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of my tricks that I can use on a regular basis is I can take, and if I flip one side, so instead of 1 over x to the 8th equals 0, which is what this says, I could flip it over and say x to the 8th equals, but what is 0 flipped over? It's going to be 1 over 0. So if I end up with x to the 8th equals 1 over 0, that is undefined. So I have according to my equation, even though my graph looks as if it may go up to 0, it's not going to make it. It is undefined. So I would say that y has to be less than 0. Or again, don't put negative infinity, comma, don't put 0, comma, negative infinity. It's going to be negative infinity, comma, 0. So that's an option there. So make sure you write them correctly. Now, that's domain, that's range. Well, we've already kind of danced around it. But for intercepts, I need 0, comma, blank and blank, comma, 0. Well, in this case, if I try plugging in 0 for x, that's going to be negative 7 over 10 times 1 over 0 to the 8th power. Well, anytime I have 0 to the 8th power, that is also undefined. So in this case, there is no y-intercept. If I put 0 in for y, we already tried that and determined it was undefined. So there's no x-intercepts. So we have domain, we have range, we have intercepts. Now, let's talk about increasing or decreasing. With increasing or decreasing, I move from left to right. So as I come across my page, what's happening? Well, initially I'm going down, 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 down. Then I end up going up, 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 up. So at this point, we would say from here to here is going down, from here to here is going up. And so we'd say decreasing happens from negative infinity, because we're talking in terms of x, to 0. But we don't include it because it's not defined. It's increasing from 0, but don't include it because it's undefined, to positive infinity. So we have domain, range, intercepts, increasing, decreasing. We also need end behavior. So in behavior, as x goes to positive infinity, right here, where does it seem to be going? It seems to be curving up toward 0. So y goes to 0. As x goes to negative infinity, as x goes to negative infinity, y seems to go to 0. So we have our end behavior. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the only thing left to do is it continuous? And the answer is no, it is not continuous. It has a giant asymptote right down the middle. It has a giant asymptote right across. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can't just graph it and expect to get all the information. You're going to have to somehow take it, look back at your equation, and see if the two things together jive. You're going to have to synthesize and combine different pieces of information. You can't just look at it and tell me the answers. So, with that, there's a quiz that's associated with this video, so make sure you do it as well.